Okay, so welcome to our live podcast. We do apologize for the delay for those who are joining us live, if anyone will still join us live. Um,
What
so
did you
yeah,
call
I
that
was
one?
just yeah, well, you
Apologies,
know,
everyone that was
yeah.
waiting for us.
Last time I messed up, so it's
It's my
I don't
turn.
know. I'm just gonna say, as we work within spirituality, I'm just gonna say this. It was meant to be because
Absolutely, it was. We were meant to have a practice last week, and we were meant to come on late this week because there's
that's
somebody
right.
watching that's going to join later. It's all meant to be.
Yeah, that's right. That's the story. Yeah, so today we have a talk about mediumship. By the way, for those who are new to our podcast, I'm Kat, and from Soul Level Healing. You can find me on YouTube and on Facebook, and I'm with Mel Stevens.
Hello, I'm Melanie Stevens. Or Mel. I'm a spiritual teacher, and again, you can find me on Facebook and YouTube as well, and TikTok. You're on TikTok, I think, aren't you, Kat?
Yes, I am. However, I'm not there very often, so I guess if anyone was actually hoping or expecting anything on there from me right now, they wouldn't get much. So therefore, this is why I'm just not mentioning it right now, I guess.
Yeah.
But yes, I am on TikTok as well. Anyone? There are quite a few videos on there. Okay, so yeah, so it's been quite a long break that we had, I think, almost 4 months. And since we've recorded last episode, so I'm really happy that we're doing it again, even if it was with few hiccups, but we're here. That's what matters, I think. And as usual, this is a live podcast on my and Mel's YouTube channel and also on my Facebook group. So if anyone wants to join us live and ask some questions and join the discussion, please do. We always we like that, basically. Let's have a conversation. Yeah, and we are talking about mediumship today. So we have mentioned mediumship a little bit, I think, in one of our previous episodes. It was something else, but we talked about mediumship in there also. But today we decided to just dedicate the whole thing on the topic of mediumship. So I thought maybe, Mel, if you'd like to start and tell us what mediumship is.
Yeah, so this is a good one because I think unless you're working in this sort of in the spiritual world, the word medium, people might conjure up different images of what that might mean. I mean, there's been some quite famous mediums, which certainly helps, but for me, the biggest difference. The best difference to understand is what's a medium and what's a psychic, because people who give readings can be both or one or the other. So a medium is somebody who acts as an intermediary between the physical 3D world of Earth and the spirit world, and they actually change their vibrational state so that they can communicate with people in the spiritual realms. What they actually do is raise their vibration, and our loved ones who've passed over to spirit slightly lower theirs, and we kind of meet in the middle. And I think that's where the word medium has come from. So a medium communicates with discarnate spirits, former humans, or animals, or anybody that is now in a spirit body and not in a physical body. And that can include spirit guides. They might communicate with ascended masters, angels, higher beings, or your Auntie Mary or your Cocker Spaniel that's in the spirit world.
Yes, exactly. So you're basically acting as the messenger or the medium. Like I said, you're in between, just relaying the message that you're inspired with by the spirit, whoever that is on the other side. I thought you've touched on an interesting point about raising your vibration. Maybe we could talk a little bit about this for those who are new to this term, because it can sound very spiritually unobtainable if you don't find yourself, if you're not very much familiar with the term, I suppose, and you're kind of new to this, because I feel that mediumship is available to everyone. And you don't have to be, sort of, I don't know, active professionally within this spiritual business, in any way to be able to do that. So raising your vibration, how would you explain that? No.
So I think the key thing to point out is that everything is energy. And if we try and think about ourselves as a non-physical being, we can get our head around it a little bit more, because our physical bodies aren't quite what they appear anyway. We're not actually as dense and solid as we think we are. But what we've got running through our bodies, within our bodies, and coming without, as in outside our bodies, is our energy. And that energy moves, it vibrates, and it vibrates at a certain frequency. And when, in order to come to earth and have an earthly experience, we have to have a slightly lower vibration than beings that reside in the spirit world. So when we talk about the spirit world, and you'll often see me doing this, because when I communicate, I often have people coming in on this side. But the spirit world, much as we talk about, we might look up, we might talk about heaven, what have you, it's not physically a higher plane, it's just a higher vibration. And because the beings in that plane vibrate at a higher frequency, we can't perceive them because we vibrate at a lower frequency. However, although we as humans vibrate slightly lower so that we can be contained within this denser physical realm, we can fluctuate that frequency, and we can ascend and evolve and enable our frequency to increase, rise, whilst we're still in the physical body. We can't raise it up to the same point as people in spirit, because when we wouldn't be on the physical anymore, but we can raise it to a certain degree. And that's done through energy work. It's done through learning to control your aura, learning to expand it. It's done through something called sitting in the power, which is when we sit with our spirit guides and we expand our aura and we connect into our heart, and we can actually change our vibrational frequency ourselves. Is that, have I made any sense there, Kat?
Oh yeah, I totally get it. Yes.
Tricky subject to try to explain without.
Yeah, I know. I just put you on the spot, and I was like, oh, that one, Mel.
Here you go, Mel.
Sorry, but yeah, I just thought, because I know that some of our listeners from my group for sure probably aren't familiar with the term. That's why I just wanted to ask you, because I'm not sure how to explain it myself, I suppose. But yeah, I think the thing is with mediumship and connecting with our loved ones, we might be connecting with them without even knowing about it. So sometimes you don't have to think about raising your vibration, right? In that sense, because many people do experience spirit in some way without trying to do something. It just happens. We can be, I think, our vibration is raised just by itself when we are quite open, when we're quiet and calm, and we don't have, I don't know, maybe too many thoughts in our mind. Maybe if we're not too preoccupied with whatever it is that we're doing. Although sometimes if you're super focused on something, actually that focus can open up the channel as well, because you're not distracted. So either way, anyone can do this. However, it would depend on your, I think, sensitivity to subtle energies, whether you would, notice that you may be connecting with spirit or not. And that's what you can see and you can try when you're practicing or in mediumship circles and things like that. You might find that when you go to a mediumship circle and you try to give out a message, it comes through easier than you thought it would, because it's just something that's innate and it's natural to all of us, but we just don't understand it until we try it. That's definitely what I've experienced, because I used to think that, if someone speaks to the dead, and I would put it in air quotes, it means that you hear and the person on the other side with your physical ears, you see them with your physical eyes, and you actually, they appear to you. And it's completely not like that. It's actually very much, they use our energy, like you said, our aura, and therefore they are sort of like, the way I understand it, they're impressing energy onto our energy field, and we are picking it up through our senses, like our hearing, but it's more of a hearing in your mind. So like as if you're talking to yourself, right? If you talk to yourself in your head, then that's the kind of communication that you would hear. You might confuse it with your own thoughts, but the only difference is that probably the thought doesn't sound like you. It doesn't sound like something like you would think about. They might impress a feeling through your aura, so you are inspired with a feeling, even if something's not happening that would inspire that particular feeling, and suddenly you're swept in some sort of emotion. I experienced that just the other day. For example, I wasn't doing anything in particular, but yet I just felt very, very subtly my energy shifted into one of openness. And I knew that that's not me. It was an inspiration from spirit. So yeah, so those things are they are there for everyone to experience, but they are very subtle. So everyone can do it. Not everyone might be able to, because not everyone might be sensitive enough just yet. But you can get better. It's sort of like, I always like the comparison with singing, I suppose, is everyone can sing, not everyone can be a great singer, right? And most of us would have to practice to be able to be better. It's just a skill, to train ourselves in, really, if we're interested.
Yeah, and I think there are many famous mediums. I read quite a lot of books by different mediums who talk about being quite sensitive as a child. So some people do, they feel like they bring then they'll say, like, I brought this gift in with me into this lifetime. Maybe they've had it in a previous life, but that doesn't mean that unless you were born with this special gift that you can't be a medium. And that's the thing, like you were saying, some people can sing right from when they're really young. They don't even have to try, it's natural. Others have to have singing lessons and learn it, but anyone can do it with the right instructor. Or you might just have a natural sort of inclination towards being able to do it. And I think there's lots of us who were open as children. I think children are very connected to spirit, because I think we come into this world without the overthinking. We learn that, we're programmed with that, we watch other people do it. And there's a big focus, particularly in the West, on sort of logic and rational thinking. And we don't really teach or encourage intuitive learning as children. It's all, we encourage people to think and remember, and you've got to recite this, and you've got to learn this, and you've got to read it back to me. And it's we don't focus enough on the other senses. But children are so open to it. I mean, I saw a spirit when I was 6, right in front of me, and it just appeared there. I didn't think about it. I didn't call anyone in. I wasn't practicing doing anything. It just appeared in front of me. Whereas now, if I want to see a spirit, I have to work really hard because my natural ability was lost as I grew up and adapted to life in a modern society. And so now it's almost like you're having to remember. When you learn mediumship, you're remembering how to be intuitive, because you probably were when you were very small.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think I'm definitely looking completely different on the whole topic of children having imaginary friends.
Yeah.
That's right. That's, I think, something that still happens, or we probably, some of us have heard, or maybe we all had imaginary friends. I mean, I can't remember, but I feel like it's actually just children seeing spirit, whether it's like a spirit of grandma, or it could be an actual spirit of some other boy who's in spirit, doesn't have to even be related. Could be angels, could be fairies, could be anything with it from the spirit world, really. So, and it's really, but those senses do get shut down once the child grows up, and it depends on how early it's being shut down, depends on what environment they're grown up in, and depends on the ideology and beliefs of their parents, right? So if the child says, oh, I don't know, let's say they talk about their friend, their imaginary, in air quotes, friend. uh, the parents might shut it down and say, oh, don't, stop making up stuff, for example, or, they're not real. And children are like sponges, so
Mm.
they take everything that you tell them because they don't have any point of reference just yet at that point, and that's what becomes their belief. And then they grow up, to be an adult with these sort of beliefs, and until they undo it, like you mentioned, programming. So until they deprogram themselves
Mm.
and come back to the original, let's say, original state of being, they just wouldn't know any better, basically. Sometimes some kids are lucky because their parents are already aware, and then they don't have a reason to shut it down. Although I do hear stories where even if parents were quite open, once they enter society, let's say through school, if the kids maybe in school start laughing at them, they might shut down because they want to fit in, right? They want to have friends and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, all of these things happen, but eventually at any point it can come back to us if we want it to. And I believe that it's probably, if it's meant to be, then it will come back to those that have probably planned to do so, before they incarnated, really.
Mm.
So yeah, don't dismiss imaginary friends, anyone who has children, because most likely they're actually um, spirit. It's probably spirit. And also pets can see. So we can see babies and pets looking at the wall, for example, or somewhere. You would think, oh, there's nothing. What are you looking at the ceiling? They're probably just looking. There's probably spirit there. Um, so yeah, I think I was reading somewhere. I don't know where it was. It was a comment on Facebook or a post somewhere, where a mom was asking about her. She was talking about her baby just randomly looking around, and her pet as well. And she was like, oh, what is that? Because it's really freaking me out. you know and then yeah, and then some people would comment that it's, oh, babies do that. And then me being me now doing mediumship, I'm like, well, they're probably seeing spirit, but it's all okay, don't be scared. So yeah.
Yeah, and I was going to ask actually what your view is on this, because knowing that we do come in to this world a bit more open and a bit more naturally intuitive and naturally inquisitive, and we don't have that skeptical angle. So there's a lot of talk about doing inner child work, particularly in the sort of spiritual realms, nurturing your inner child. We're only a child for a very small part of our life, but we still carry that innocent part of us, if you like, is still there. And sometimes we need to nurture it through play or nostalgia or doing something more creative. Now, knowing that we're naturally more open and accepting to spirit when we're children, and we're probably more sensitive to energy, which is the same as with pets. If we do inner child healing and inner child work, do you think that could enhance mediumship?
I think it could, because when we do inner child work, we most likely are healing a lot of baggage. Because one thing that can help us be open and more sensitive, or at least in tune with our senses, maybe let's say, is working on releasing anything that we have piled on top of our shoulders through life. So anything like we said, the programming, any traumas, any false beliefs, anything negative, fears, anxieties, we carry that all because we've picked it up at some point. And those are all of the energies. It stays within our energy field. And then it can block our sensitivity because spirit realm can be very subtle. So I think for that reason, maybe it can. And also, once you've, let's say you went through healing and you've healed quite a few things, you feel a little bit lighter. That's how your vibration rises.
Mhm.
Also, by feeling lighter, we're just dropping all the heaviness that we have accumulated. And then once you find that childlike innocence, playfulness, all of these things again raise your vibration. And when you this way you're just basically more open that way, because you're not so stressed out. And I think, yeah, I hope I answered the question, but I think that's how it maybe works. Because then, even if you're, for example, if I when I was practicing mediumship, and when I started, I was always very anxious for some reason. Obviously, I've, still using the same term, I have deprogrammed myself from all of that. And at some point, I knew that in order to help myself with the readings, for them to be a little bit, maybe for them to be better, but for my experience of them to be better, I decided to just have fun. I just said, oh, well, whatever comes through, it will come through. Why do I need to, feel like it has to be a certain way? That's definitely a very childlike way
Yeah.
of approaching it. You just, because, children just experiment, they just go in and they just do it. They're not like, having all of this self-doubt and all of that stuff. So when you can come back to that state, it makes it a lot easier.
And I think, the younger we are, we can be a bit more spontaneous as well. Whereas I have a tendency to overthink everything, and I get in my own way by doing that, and that blocks intuition. It blocks mediumship. It blocks everything. And I always teach this as well when I'm teaching other people, like intuition development. It's your thinking mind that gets in the way all the time. Whereas I don't think when we're younger, when we're children, we don't overanalyze every single situation. We just get on with it. We don't think, oh, will these people think I'm a bit strange if I talk about this subject? We just say it, we just blurt it out without thinking. Thinking doesn't come in, and that's actually what channeling is. When your thinking mind is completely out of the way and you're just letting whatever comes into your head, whatever hits your mind, come straight out of your mouth. You're just in that zone, in that flow. And that could be inspired talking, which is a form of mediumship, letting your spirit guides or your loved ones inspire you with their words, and you go into a really relaxed state, relaxing your brain waves so that they change. Your brain waves actually change state from beta to alpha when you're more relaxed, and then you just allow thoughts to come into your mind and just allow it all to come out of your mouth without thinking about it. And I do think that's something that we have a natural ability to do, because we can do it often when we're children, but we just learn so many bad things, unhelpful behaviors, not bad, but unhelpful behaviors that block our intuition. So it is all about unlearning and deprogramming, and that will make you better as a medium. You're kind of regressing back, if you like, to a more spontaneous, childlike state of flow when you want to allow that knowledge to come through.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned about the left brain and right brain. I remember one of my first exercises that I was advised to do by a medium on the day when I very first time did my first mediumship reading. We were sat in pairs. The lady was doing a reading for me. I was doing it for her. And she did mention that my grandma, on the other side, suggests that I start drawing to wake up, or even remind myself of the right brain, the creative imaginary side. That's the one that spirit can use in order to impress messages through us. Because I haven't been creative, artistic in any way at all since probably being a kid. And I just took up drawing just because, without any judgment of how good I am or bad I am. It's not about, again, because that would be our thinking brain. It's like, oh, I have to make it perfect. This is how I write. This is how you draw a face. This is the line. That's, again, we're going into the other side of the brain. We just want it to flow and just have fun with it. And so I did that. And yes, it did help. That's one of the ways, very easy ways, I think, to get our creative juices flowing, and open up. If I've seen even some. I think on Netflix there are series about, is it Taylor? I think his name is Taylor. He's quite known because he lives in Hollywood, so He does readings for, I think, also celebrities. I think, I might be wrong, but anyway, his process looks. He has to have a piece of paper, and he just draws, just
Yeah,
nothing. He just
yeah,
uses his hand to move. So that, and I understand it, because that's how you take away the energy from the thinking, because you're still doing something. So it's like occupied, and yet you're open on the other side to spirit, and it flows a lot better.
yeah. I've seen a couple of mediums. In fact, I went to see a medium many years ago, and he was doing that. He was just drawing sort of circles, and he said, "You'll have to excuse me if it looks like I'm drawing, like doodling. This is how I prepare. You know, how I prepare for the session." And he sort of was drawing. And again, you know, I totally blame my Virgo rising sign for this, but even when I'm trying to get into that creative space and I'm drawing, I'm criticizing what I've drawn. Oh no, that line's not right. Oh, I'm gonna have to rub that bit out now. And it's like, no, you're missing the point. Your spirit guides keep telling you to draw, or you know, use your pyrography set, do something creative, not to get you to beat yourself up because it's not perfect, because it's never going to be perfect. I'm not very good at it. It's for the joy of doing it. I love making things. They don't usually look very good, but it's not about the end result. It's the joy of doing something that just gets you in that kind of daydream state. And it's that daydream state that's very, very helpful when it comes to doing mediumship or any kind of spiritual work, really. And yet, again, when we're children, we're often told off for daydreaming. Stop daydreaming, wake up, answer the question, listen to me, I'm talking to you. And yet now as an adult, I'm now trying to remember to factor in time into my day to meditate or daydream or manifest or all of these other things that don't require me to actually be doing something. So again, it's going back to what we've probably done many years ago and been programmed out of us by our society.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, don't judge yourself. Just do anything creative that you like, and it doesn't have to be also drawing. Just listening to music, dancing, moving your body. Without any judgment. We just want to be in a state of flow, and that will help. Yeah. So yeah. Oh gosh, there was something else I was gonna say, and obviously I just lost it now. Um, okay, let's just move on. Um, Maybe it
It's,
will come back.
it's
Oh, I
interesting.
know.
If you
I
got
know.
it,
It's
go
the
on, say it
cards.
before you say it.
Sorry.
Go on.
I was going to mention the cards, because when you were talking about the inspiration that comes in, I just thought, I think that's why cards are I really like them. When I started, because I started with mediumship, then I discovered, oh, that's how you read cards, and then I discovered all of these oracle decks and
Oh,
everything,
tell me
which
about
are
it.
very beautiful, right?
Yeah.
That definitely feeds your artistic
Mm.
senses and your creative side. And I found that I'm very good at reading cards, because they would inspire me so much just through the pictures, the colors, they're just, again, depending on what deck you buy, they have all kind of different themes, different feeling to them. Like they take you, you can really daydream with the cards. Definitely, I think they're like little pieces of art, and you have
Oh,
like at least 44 of them in each deck. And I just thought, wow, I started feeling very inspired, very much, as I understood how, blocked I was before. And that helped me then also with my mediumship readings, because I felt, when even if I didn't end up reading the card, just having it in front of me, it would really start to open me up, and I was a lot more susceptible to pick up the subtle communication from spirit, just by having the card, because it speaks to you through your right brain, doesn't speak to you through the analytical side. So yeah, just
I,
looking at art. Sorry.
yeah. I find even without reading a card, the act of shuffling the deck
Mm-hmm.
And my little sort of routine that I cleanse, and I knock on the deck 3 times and I shuffle the cards, and that for me is because I'm using my hands and I'm doing something
Yes.
creative. Even if I don't pull a card, sometimes I just shuffle the deck and I get my message from my spirit guides and think, oh, I don't need one, do I? Because you've answered the question. But it gets me in that kind of zone,
Yes.
just the act of just the movement and shuffling.
Yeah, it's like the doodling. So, right,
Yeah,
it definitely shuffling. And I remember whenever I shuffle, I sometimes repeat someone's name, whoever I'm reading for, in my mind, and it just comes because I'm busy with my hands. So my left brain is busy doing something practical, and so I can open up, right? I can open up and not worry about judging anything. Sometimes I do also write someone's name on a piece of paper. I notice that works for me sometimes also. If I'm like, if I was reading, doing a reading for you, Mel, I would just say Mel Stevens, and I might go over those writings. It's just the act of it, so
yeah,
that
yeah.
and that also helps. Sometimes I do that. I used to do that when we had our live readings. I would just write someone's name so that I can block, let's say, anything out,
Mm.
anything else around me, and just start writing down if there's something that's coming to me at the moment.
Mhm. And I think we were talking about this the other day about when we first met in a mediumship development circle many years
Mm.
ago. And a mediumship development circle is fantastic for practicing and developing, because you gain so much from practicing with other people in a safe space where you're with people you feel comfortable with. You tend to, once you've got the circle together, it's the same people that go all the time because you feel comfortable when it's the same people's energy. And as you're all developing and your individual vibration is rising, collectively as a group, your energy is rising, which makes it easier for the messages to come through when you're in a group situation. But
Yes, that's it. Sorry, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
what I found helpful when I first started doing mediumship and I shut my eyes, I wasn't, I can see now clairvoyantly, but I never used to be able to. And I'd shut my eyes and see nothing. And that can bring up quite a bit of frustration when you're not naturally clairvoyant. I've developed other senses at the time, so I focused on them and then I came back to clairvoyance later. But what I found helpful was learning to read the cards
Mm.
first. So I did what you did, started with mediumship, felt really drawn towards psychic cards, learned them, and I've come back to mediumship as well now. But when you've been reading with tarot cards or oracle cards and you're used to seeing beautiful images and colors and symbols, there's so many symbols in the decks. When you then start to develop clairvoyance, I'm often shown things that I've seen in one of my tarot or oracle cards because my spirit guides know that's a way to communicate with me. Because if I see, a coin in one of my tarot cards, I know what that means for me. So they'll show me that same sort of pentacle clairvoyantly. So you kind of develop your own signs and symbols and ways to communicate with spirit through reading the cards first and then coming into learn mediumship.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So yeah, that's the thing, because then we would enter the topic of different senses. So some people are more clairvoyant, some might be more clairaudient. So you learn all of these clairs, about all of these clairs, once you get into reading cards, or being a medium. It just relates to all different kinds of senses, like clear seeing, because clair basically means clear. I'm pretty sure. So clear seeing in a sense of in your mind. Are you, if you're a very vivid dreamer, most likely you're clairvoyant. I am, and again, I didn't know that that was one of the you know that it was clairvoyance. Only when I started doing this work, I was like, oh wow, so I am clairvoyant, quite strongly. And then you have clairsentience, so feeling. You would feel a lot of people who identify as empaths most likely will be clairsentient, because you can feel the energy, feel the emotions, the feelings. And also, I think in that category comes in actual physical feeling in the clairsentience. So sometimes you might feel spirit tapping you on the nose. I had that once when I was doing a reading. Sometimes they would show you. So if you're trying to ask them, let's say, how they passed away. That's one of the questions I think mediums tend to ask spirit. and they would impress some sort of a feeling on your body somewhere. Then what, clairaudience, so hearing, but again, it's not hearing outside of you. You hear it in your head, as you would hear your thoughts. Those are like the main ones. Or claircognizance, so it's just clear knowing. You just know. That was a big one for me, because I'm quite strongly claircognizant, and I feel it's a difficult one, because you don't know if you're making stuff up. Because you're like, well, I just know. I don't know where from. I can't explain how I know. I just know. And it shows through really, sometimes I would say, amazing readings that I have, because they all differ as well. As a medium, as a psychic, when I do readings, I experience them differently, and sometimes they are so obvious that spirit is just, let's call it, dumping information into my mind, because I'm saying one thing, and then suddenly I've got all these 10 things that I know I need to say, and I'm like, okay, hang on a second. I'm just on this one. I was just doing a reading for someone not long ago, and I started talking about her work, and then I knew I have to talk about her relationship, and then it's like about changing work, and I'm like, how is that connecting? And then, well, it made sense to her, so I thought, okay, well, that's good, because
Yeah.
I go from one topic to another topic to the third topic, and it somehow it makes a whole. But yeah, so you just learn how sensitive you are, which senses are maybe a little bit more sensitive than the others, and you just work with that, really, as you develop.
And that's part of the development. If you're in a circle, you will, you'll notice how you bring through messages. It's not, mediumship isn't like having a conversation like we are now. It's you don't get full coherent sentences. You get snippets of images, snippets of symbols. Colors might come up, smells might come up, a taste, a memory, a word, a feeling in your body, but you kind of end up with a story from this little snippet that you're being shown. It's almost like a flash in your mind of an image on a TV screen, but you're like, oh, I just saw this and this, and they were doing that, and you can relay an entire story, but you only saw like a very quick flash of this scene. So it is very fast as well. That was another thing that I noticed, is that the information just comes through and it goes very quickly, and then they're sending you something else. So you when you're developing, you're like, all right, slow down. But again, that's their vibration. They vibrate at a different frequency, so for them it's not fast or slow. It's just, they just send
Yeah,
information, and we have to interpret it, and that's the bit that is a bit slower sometimes when you're learning, because we get this one thing and then we can get stuck on it. Why are they showing me an orchard? Why are they showing me this? And we're trying to figure it out, and then they're just probably waiting there like, come on.
just say you see an orchard,
Yes,
it's like, and
yeah,
then you don't know, and the sitter's like, oh yeah, I know what that means. That is, and you're like, oh,
yeah.
thank goodness, because that's the thing, because our thinking brain, our analytical side, can sort of chip in during the reading, in an unhelpful way, because again, we can't help ourselves. We're people, right? We're human. We live in the world of judgment and opinion and everything. It's really hard to get rid of that. So we judge ourselves. We're overly analytical and doubt ourselves. We don't trust ourselves. All of these things, which you also develop, not develop, but you work through when you start this work. But then, when it comes to it and you're actually doing a reading, yeah, you can really, if you want to, you can really self-sabotage yourself as a medium, as the reader. So, you know maybe someone might think, oh, I'll go and see a medium and they should tell me everything, because if you're a bit skeptical, and you're not sure, and you think that a medium or a psychic means that they know everything, well, it doesn't exactly work that way. And also, like I said, we're human and we have our own, let's call it, I don't want to call it issue. It's not an issue. It's just a challenge. It's an extra challenge, just to be able to relay a message to you during a session. It's like a little bit of a battlefield sometimes within our own minds, depending on how experienced you are of a reader. to just to relay the message. So yeah, be understanding and open, and your energy is just as important when you come for a reading. That's why a lot of mediums or psychics ask, does this resonate? Can you take this information? And if you say yes and you're open, then that raises the vibration of the whole, of the reader, of you, probably the room, the space that you're in. It just becomes a lot more open, and then the medium can give you even more information, because your openness helps. It really helps. If you come in, if you're super skeptical, and you come in and you just, let's say you have a very closed energy, you come in like this and like, well, tell me now, right? And maybe you decided that you asked, I don't know, let's say your grandma in spirit, well, grandma, you have to show me a yellow flower, or the medium has to mention a yellow flower, because otherwise I will not believe. When you just come in with this very defensive attitude, there is a high chance that the reader will stumble, and it might not be a great experience overall. Again, depending on their experience and how well they can cope with very negative attitude, let's say. Yeah, so just be mindful of that when you go for a reading.
I've never really understood, like, why would you go and pay for a reading if you don't believe it? what's the point? Like, why would you go and have one? And I think it's people want to believe,
Yeah,
but they're like, well, you've got to convince me. And it's like, well, actually, no, the medium doesn't have to do anything. It's up to you. If you're going to poo-poo what they say, and sit there and just say no to everything, even though you might be thinking, well, yeah, that could mean that, then you're not going to get the best out of the experience. I wouldn't. I just don't know why anyone would go for a reading who's really not feeling it. If you're curious but you're a little bit skeptical, that's fine. We're all like that once. That's okay. We've all got that. But going in with an open mind, you know what? I'm going to enjoy the reading. I'm going to see what it's all about. Is better than you've got to prove it to me, and I'm going to sit here with my arms folded and I'm going to put a barrier up and not let you in, because that makes it really hard then for the reader to connect, because you're so closed off. And you might find, I've heard before that when people have gone to a medium like that, their loved ones and spirits have just said, no, I'm not giving you any information. They're not ready to hear it. And so the medium's like, help me out here. Person in front of me, and they look really angry, and they're like, no, they're not ready to hear it. They'll have to come back another time. I think it was Gordon Smith in one of his books, he mentioned that, and he's just like, sorry, you have to find someone else, because they're not giving me anything, because you're not going to listen.
yeah, exactly. Gosh, again, I just wanted to say something, and it just I just lost it. But yeah, I don't know.
Brain. How long have you been baby brain for things like that?
Oh gosh, I think from what I understand, baby brain is just forever now.
Yeah.
Because the baby's here forever, so I think it's going to be here forever.
When he's 25, sorry, baby brain.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, so just be open and help out. And as you said, I think people do come in because they want to believe, but they're, whatever makes them be super skeptical, or they might think that medium is a fraud, and they just made research on Facebook, which, by the way, yes, it can happen, because as with everything, there are people who aren't honest, so don't just judge the whole mediumship movement, let's call it, by one negative experience that you might have had, or someone else that have had. Also bear in mind that sometimes the information that the medium shares with you might not make sense to you at this very time, but it will at some point. That's something to keep in mind as well. It
That's
does
quite
happen.
common.
Yeah,
that's quite common. Like somebody saying, I can't take any of this, and then a few days later they message you and like, oh my god, guess what's happened? You're like, really?
yeah, exactly.
Told you.
Yeah, and it might be because you're a little bit blocked from hearing the truth sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes it's just our memory. Like I remember I was a really rubbish sitter to start with. When I was going to the mediumship circles and I was receiving a message, and I'll be like, and I really wanted to be like, yes, I remember, or I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know. But luckily, because I was very open and positive, I would just say, I'm really sorry, I just don't know, I just can't remember right now. And then it would come to me after when I came
Yeah.
home, and I'm like, oh right, I get it now. So yeah.
Yeah, my memory is really bad. And I think sometimes when you go for a reading and you have somebody you really want to hear from, so when someone else comes through, you can kind of be so fixated on, I wanted to hear from my so and so, granddad, and I wanted to hear his opinion on such and such, that when they say, oh, we've got your auntie here, sometimes you can kind of almost switch off a little bit because you just weren't expecting it, especially if you go to a demonstration of mediumship and somebody, calls on you and you're in the audience. Sometimes you're a bit embarrassed because you're like, oh, suddenly everyone's looking at me. Your mind goes blank and they're bringing all this stuff forward. You're like, I don't know, because your memory's gone, and then it comes back afterwards and you're like, oh, I'm so sorry. It's just come
That's
back.
exactly that's exactly what happened to me when I started. That was before I went to mediumship circles. I went to the demonstration, and the medium mentioned something that it was the only thing that I remembered about my auntie at the time. But I didn't like the thing with my auntie is because she was living in a completely different city. I haven't seen her since I was, I don't know, 10, maybe 12. I was quite young. She was nowhere on my radar of of thinking about. And he mentioned, and I was sat quite far away as well. And he mentioned about this lady. She was a part of like a religious circle or some. I think he used different words. Anyway, I knew what he meant, and I felt again those were my very first days, and I was a bit skeptical, open but skeptical. I'm like, well, that could be anyone. I was thinking, that could be anyone. And then he kept asking, no one else raised their hand, and so he just moved on to someone else. And then I came home and it just hit me. I'm like, oh my god, my auntie. Of course she would mention that because that's the only thing I knew of her at the time, the only thing I remembered. So yeah, and then since then when I went to the circle, someone else then brought her through again. It was a little bit smaller audience, and I was like, yes, I know that one now. It happens. Yeah.
Yeah, it happened to me as well. I went and had a reading with somebody, and he said, "Oh, I've got a gentleman in his 60s who died with an issue, a respiratory issue in the upper part of his chest." And I just couldn't think of it. And he said, "It's okay. I'll get him to step back," because there was someone else right there wanting to come through. And he said, "I've got someone else that's got a really important message." And that message was really important. So I was glad I had it delivered. Couldn't work out who this guy was. Came home, said to my husband, "Oh, apparently had this guy in his 60s, blah, blah, blah." And he said, "James," which is my father-in-law. And as soon as Dom said it, I thought, oh, of course it was. But
Yeah.
just didn't come into my head, because you think you've got quite a lot of people over in spirit, most people, when they get to a bit older. And you're going through the archive like, is it so-and-so? Is it my mate? Is it this person? And it doesn't come to you until hours later. So, yeah, that can happen. I think we just
Yes.
get used to that.
So, yeah, if you're interested in receiving a mediumship reading, have a look into it and be open when you receive a reading. I am offering readings at the minute, whether it's in online, in person, or via email as well. We don't need to be in the same space, but yeah, just be open and just have fun. I guess if you can have fun, obviously. And it will I think it will be a very healing experience and a very positive one.
Absolutely. And I don't know if you want to, at the end, Kat, just pop a link in the comments. I mean, everybody knows your website, but maybe a link to where they can book a reading with you, to your page.
Yes, so I will be putting all this information once this live is broadcasted, and it will be on our YouTube channel. Those who are on my group, you know how to contact me, but all of our details will be in the description. It's just not there right this minute. But yeah, please look there to the description for any links. If you have any questions, then please let us know on the topic that we have covered. But for today, we'll need to go. As always, we're open to any questions or suggestions. Please give us some suggestions. If you'd like us to maybe talk a little bit more about something that we've mentioned today, that's totally fine. We're doing this podcast for you guys. Obviously, we're having fun and we're choosing topics that we're interested in, but you know, we're very open to suggestions as well. Okay, so thank you very much. Unless there's anything else more that you want to mention.
I will also pop a link in the comments to I've got a new card reading course out. So anybody who is interested in learning to read the cards for themselves, or if you want to become a professional reader, the course is quite chunky. There's quite a lot there. So it's ideal for beginners or people who have some experience of reading cards, whether that's tarot cards, whether that's oracle cards, it doesn't matter, because I'm actually teaching intuitive reading, not the traditional method of tarot reading. So I will pop a link in the comments to the course in case anybody wants to take a look.
Perfect. Okay, we'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.